My parents have owned a tavern/restaurant for 14 years in a relatively small town. My father is someone who likes to start new projects and is a well-known person in our town. One day he was contacted by the local realtor to offer my father a private showing of a historical hotel that had been up for sale. This hotel has been around for decades and went from hotel to restaurant to bar with little success. Everyone who had owned it before put it back on the market within a year. The bank had the title now, and the realtors told my father, if you don't buy it and fix it up, they plan on ripping it down. A lot of people in the town thought the only person who could save it was my father, so he bought the hotel. My parents kept the downstairs bar and renovated the upstairs for apartments. That is when odd things started to happen. My father would come home almost every night with the camera footage to show my mom and I. The footage always showed an empty pool room with small random orbs floating in the foreground. My father is a believer in the paranormal, but my mother is not, so her and I both chalked it up to bugs and dust. Although I will agree, the way the orbs zigzagged around the room was weird, it still seemed like nothing. A month goes by and my father comes home early on a Sunday from working down at the hotel. He walked in the house, spooked, something my father rarely is. He detailed out how he was behind the bar checking on receipts from the night before when he heard footsteps approaching from the hallway entrance. We don't open on Sunday, but if someone my dad knew saw his truck in the parking lot, they would just walk in to see him, so he didn't find the footsteps odd at all. Without looking up from his receipts, he called out, "We aren't open, but give me a second." He heard the footsteps enter the barroom and take 6 more steps toward him before stopping. Taking another second to finish going over last night's shift, he looks up and peers around the wooden support beam, and there is no one there. He said he got out of there so fast, he doesn't even remember locking the door behind him. My mom obviously thinks he is crazy, but I am freaked. That place had always given me the creeps, but my father confirming my fears made me never step foot in that building again. 2 days ago, my mom had an experience there that sent her out the door faster than my dad. She was in the barroom before opening hours collecting the shift money from the night before. She wasn't in there for more than 5 minutes before she started to hear the faint sound of music coming from the entrance hallway. She said she ignored it for a while, assuming it was one of the tenants upstairs. After collecting the money, she went to leave and the music started getting louder. She said it sounded like old waltz music, piano-based, and it sounded clear as day. The further she walked down the hall toward the bathrooms, the more prominent the noise became. As she stepped in front of the women's restroom, she said it sounded like someone was in there playing the music on their phone. By this time, my mom was sufficiently freaked out and ran out of rational reasoning behind what it could be. Just as she was about to open the door, she said she heard the water turn on and off twice before running out of the building. In the parking lot, she called my dad to come down, certain someone had been in there with her, but when he came down to check it out, no one was there. Now my mom is a believer and we are both properly terrified of that old creepy building. Hotel burnt down last week. Cause has been undetermined. My sister and I were road tripping to the West Coast to move there, and we stopped at a hotel for one night to split up a 2-day drive in mid-June. We also brought along her super friendly but intimidating black Brittany/Pitbull mixed pup. I should also mention that I am a 17-year-old, feminine-looking guy and often get mistaken for a girl because of my figure. We got to this hotel at around 7 p.m., checked in, and got our room on the 2nd floor. Everything was going great, but we were hungry from the trip. Since her back was hurting from the drive, I reluctantly went down about 2 blocks to get us some sandwiches. The walk goes fine, there and back, and soon I'm back at the building. I am hungry and ready to eat. Much to my dismay, my sister informs me that she forgot some things in her car and wants me to go get them. Whatever. I take her keys and run down to the car. It only takes about 5 minutes and I'm back at the hotel again. Now, this hotel is one of those where the walkway to the rooms is an open balcony and the elevator is only accessible with a key card. So, I walk up to it, and as I do, I see these two men seemingly about to get into their car, or so I thought. One had his hand on the door to the car, but upon seeing me, they both headed towards the elevator. I've read enough of these stories here to see where this situation is headed. I decide that if I walk away, that would just invite them to follow me, in a city I've never been in, by the way. So, I use my key card and press the elevator button. I get in and, unsurprisingly, they do too. I think to myself, now what? And I suddenly remember that my sister has pepper spray on her lanyard with her keys. I firmly grasp it in my hand and have my finger resting on the top, ready to spray. Now, thankfully, our room is a turn to the right and then a straight shot from the elevator. I get off and try to let them get off first so they aren't behind me, but they insist I go first. Great. So now, I'm fast walking to our room, key card in one hand, pepper spray in the other, ready to slam the door when I get in. I open the door and these dudes are right behind me. Seriously, like 5 inches away, probably ready to grab me. I open the door and say, "Hey, I have the stuff from the car," making sure they hear me loud and clear and pushing past the dog into the room. I close the door and see them looking in at my sister, who is sitting on her bed, facing the door. I see them turn to walk past our room to the right, where there is only one other room. I give my sister a look like, "Holy shit, you won't believe these creeps," and lock the door behind me. I think, had they not seen my sister and her dog, they most likely would have followed me into my room and done who knows what to me. My sister also says she saw them walk past our window and look in because our blinds weren't closed all the way. We think we heard them talking to a woman in the hall and heard them say goodbye, so they probably aren't even staying here. When I was younger, my family used to take vacations, being that my cousins and I were similar in age. This one year, 2008-ish, we went to Universal Studios in Orlando when this happened. I am the youngest of 9 cousins, including my sister, all of whom were girls, except me. As I said, our ages were close and only ranged from myself at around 10 to my oldest cousin at 15. At this age in my life, I remember being particularly paranoid, whether it had been a scary movie or two, learning about things in school/news, etc. So let's just say my perspective and reactions may have been skewed by this. I remember having recently seen the movie Disturbia, and it really shook me up. This will come into play shortly. So my big Italian family was staying at the Hard Rock Hotel, wherein there are restaurants, bars, pools, shops, etc. This one night, the parents gave us money to go to the ice cream parlor within the resort. "Stay together," they said. I immediately knew the moment I saw him. I still remember his face to this day. He was a spitting image of the killer from Disturbia, and this ticked me off from the get-go. I remember being online with my cousins, hanging on the end, oldest goes first, and I was locked onto this guy. I may be the youngest, but I also hold a responsibility being the only boy. I first saw him make an inaudible comment to one of my cousins before ordering his ice cream. Keep in mind, this place is packed, a lot going on. Kids running around, maps open, distractions everywhere. But my eyes are locked. Next, I see him clearly lean back a little over to take a look at two of my cousin's legs, talking 13, 14-year-old girls. And as I mentioned, the place is packed, line is long, people are shoulder to shoulder. And that's when things got crazy. As he was paying with his left hand, his right was sort of hovering over my cousin's, but just barely touching. With everything going on, they didn't notice a thing. I turned to my sister and told her what was up. Two heads is better than one, plus, I wanted to make sure I wasn't just seeing things. Her face immediately turned grotesque when she saw what I was talking about. Two of my cousins have already ordered ice cream. My sister told us all that she was getting a call, talking 15-year-old, pre-smartphone era, only for emergencies flip phone, so it would really only be our parents, and that we needed to get off the line. Good quick thinking on her part. The two who ordered being understandably furious, my cousin sadly walked past all the eager ice cream customers. When I asked my cousin what that man said to her, she said he asked if we were all together. For a minute there, and sometimes even to this day, I wonder about whether or not I made a scene over nothing, perhaps only because he resembled someone bad in a movie. But his cold, long, hard stare at me as I departed the parlor with my cousins, safe, will always chill me to the bone.